Hello, good evening, and welcome to Man's Model Moments, everybody. Um, I am slightly dark and washed out here. Apologies for that. If I look like I've just woken up, probably because I have. So we had some friends over last night. It was a very late evening, and then I was up this morning early. And of course, it was the Yeovil Model Show today. So I was over there, did a bunch of recording, and got back, I don't know, about 4:30 or so, and then went to sleep for about 4 hours, 3 hours, 3.5 hours. So that brings us to today. And now, when I just got up, had some food, and got here. So if I look like death warmed up, that's the reason. So anyway, here we are, and I'm going to be talking a little bit and showing you the more of the Firefly. And obviously I mentioned the Photo-etch pieces, and some of the bits that I'm going to be looking at today with Photo-etch are some of these. So these are the three items I have. Here we go. Try and not get big glare on those. To show you kind of what Photo-etch pieces that you can have to make Photo-etch a little bit easier, rather than just using what you can find in your hobbying bench. And hello, by the way, and thank you for coming and saying hello for those of you who bumped into me at the show today. If there's anybody here that made it. So I'm just getting a little drink. The cow's lick, yes, it is, isn't it? Yeah, it's kind of all over the place, but which is why it's very dark in here, so you can't really see how bad it is. Still, mainly you won't be looking at me, so that's a good thing. So what I will probably do, move that aside. So Yeovil Model Show, a little bit different from the last time I went, because they are apparently, it's always at Westfield Academy in Yeovil, obviously, and they were having some building work, or are having some building work done in the upper building. So they always use the sports hall, the big weird positive pressure tent, like permanent tent thing, which is interesting to see just by itself. And then, of course, the third building is normally the upper building, and today we couldn't use that, so they had the lower building, which is, it's not a huge way, but it's a couple of minutes walk from the other bits, and it wasn't quite as pleasant a day today as the last time I went. It was a little bit windy. It's been, I can't remember what the storm is called. It begins with K. I can't remember, but that's the naming convention in the UK, is that they get names alternating between male and female, which I don't know in 2024 if even that's offensive. Maybe they should have a non-binary name as well. But they go through the letters of the alphabet, and so you get Storm Gary, and then it'll be Storm Hilda or whatever. And there was one with a K, which is coming up or is in progress at the moment. I don't know how they can distinguish one set of high winds from another set of high winds day to day. I don't know, but it's pretty windy today. It was pretty windy. Caught up with Moss. Moss was there, so Moss has had a month off. Oh, this is today's T-shirt, by the way. This is sulfur, argon, calcium, and samarium, the elements required to deal with stupidity. Yeah, so caught up with Moss today. He's had a month off. He's had a lot on, and he's back to things again now. He's just been doing Airfix and Chill. So obviously Airfix and Chill will be tomorrow. I'll be there. Drinking cacao latte, which is a Spanish chocolate drink. Those of you who didn't know, my girlfriend is Catalan. She's from Barcelona. So they're having Spanish flavor of the week. I think it's Lidl or Aldi. They have flavor of the week in the UK and possibly in Europe as well. I don't know whether they sync across their various things. Probably do. And it's Spain, so we're drinking cacao latte. We've got little, these sort of desserts, which are kind of like a liquid creme brulee. Can't remember what they're called. I can't speak Spanish. And also empanada. That's it. I've not said that correctly, but that's how most British people probably pronounce it. Maria says it in a different way that sounds like I'm saying it to me, but it doesn't sound the same when it comes out. So yes, that's what I had for dinner this evening. Tuna empanada, very nice. And this stuff is very tasty as well. It's got lots of energy, so I'm trying to wake up. Yeah, I think. Why did they start naming storms? I think we like to name things as a species, don't we? We like to give attach labels to stuff. I think that's one of the things, and I think it's useful in the fact that you can then refer back to it easily, and you have a common kind of denominator. I guess that's why we started naming things, like wasp and cow and stuff, so that rather than the stingy thing or the eaty thing. But it just, when a storm is, a weather system, it's not a kind of discrete entity. They ebb and flow, and yeah, it does seem a little weird to name these things, but hey ho. Bro, where's the plane? Patience. You've obviously never been on one of my streams before. The plane will come. But first we have the various ramblings and meandering discussion that we start with. Right, let's just have a quick look at the chat. So we have a lot of usual suspects. The two Davids, so David Markey, David Barber, Howard Kendrick, hello. Kercheval, good evening. Gary T, Graham, welcome. Vistrom, good to see you. Gary from Gremlins Modeling Mayhem, good evening, everyone. Mario, good evening. Mark, hello to you, sir. My fellow named Alex, good to see you. Wayne, good evening, Wayne. Don't know why you weren't at Yeovil, Wayne. Yeah, Wales isn't that far away. We had a good showing from Welsh contingent clubs actually at the show today. I'm not sure when I'll get the video up for the Yeovil show. They're not difficult videos. Show videos, actually, surprisingly, are probably one of the easier videos to edit because it's mostly live footage. Especially if you've been to a show before, you kind of know the rhythm and stuff. It's a little bit of a different setup today, so but it will still be relatively easy. But of course, we've got FX and Chill tomorrow. I've got the interview with Valeria from ICM happening on Tuesday, so I'm recording that on Tuesday, which will go live. So the midweek model meet this week will be a recording of that interview with myself. It's called a live recording. It's a weird thing in StreamYard, but basically I'll replay the video in real time. I'll be here to answer any questions that people have, like why did you say this or whatever, add anything that I can. But I think that'll be an interesting one for a lot of people. And I'll probably polish that video a little bit after it's gone out as well, but we'll see. We'll see how it looks. Uh, so, Scruff, not seen you before in the chat. Good to see you. Oh, and you do say that is my first stream, and that your furniture has been messed up by the storm. Sorry to hear that. We solved that by not having furniture outside, though we do have a pyracantha, which our friends who came last night didn't know what a pyracantha was. It is a firethorn, a type of bush that has pretty nasty, like inch-long spines on it, thorns, and yellow to red berries. Hence firethorn, because once it's in autumn, it looks like it's got all of the bushes on. It's very pretty. Looks like it's on fire, and you feel like it's on fire if you fall into it, because those thorns. Ouch. Let's see. Graham Coxon. Yes, a bit damp and breezy. Indeed. Oops. Accidentally clicked on when the script moved up. And LH, welcome. And Doug just came in as well, building a frog Canberra. Interesting challenge indeed. So those of you who have not built, interesting fact actually, Frog were the first injection molding plastic company back in the 30s. They actually made the first injection molded kit, and Frog, of course, so it stands for flies right off the ground. The plastic kits were actually its secondary range, because its first range were actually flying kits, hence flies right off the ground. And then it launched its penguin series, I think it was 1936, which were the static line, hence the penguin, because a penguin is a non-flying bird. So the British actually started, much like a lot of things in the world, we started something that other people have then done better than us. So that is the story of Frog, really. And of course, Frog no longer exists, ceased to exist in the 70s, I believe, when a lot of the molds were sold to Novo. So you will often see a Frog kit reissued as a Novo kit. Novo, of course, being based in the Soviet Union, which I think it was actually in the early 80s, maybe, Frog was, the molds were sold there. Now, Frog, although, and I'm actually going to switch cameras here, I think. So bear with me a second. Hopefully this all works correctly. Oh, yes, there we go. Although that is a terrible angle. It will change, don't worry. So Frog, and let's just get some better lighting here, because this camera prefers it to be as bright as possible. Where is my little control? Too many wires. Too many objects. Not that one. There we go. Light, more light. Like Jeremy Clarkson with speed. There. That's better. So don't worry about the angle too much, it will change. So yes, here we go. Frog flies right off the ground. So Frog were actually ahead of their time in many ways. So if we look at their instructions, so there we go. They were actually pretty good for the time, because you have compartmentalized constructions, so very simple steps, which is a good thing. You don't want a lot going on in one set of instructions, so that you don't get lost in it. Okay. And they were nice isometric drawings, very clear. To be honest, these are better than some instructions you get in some kits today. So just because Frog were the first doesn't mean that they weren't doing a lot of things very, very well. They also had this. I think actually is a lot more useful than a lot of kits today. with these pictorial versions, and then obviously the description down the side of what you're actually supposed to do, it's very clear what it's showing in each of these steps together with the text. Even though we wouldn't do some of these things, so you probably wouldn't draw on your model to mask out, although actually not that silly an idea for some. Showing you how to do things like stippling. I'll probably cover this at some point, maybe in a future live stream about stippling, because a lot of people assume that you can't do these types of camouflage schemes unless you have an airbrush, or at least can't do them well, which isn't true. Of course, people were doing them way before the invention of, not the invention of, but the widespread adoption of airbrushes. Because you've got to remember that back in the 60s, an airbrush was an expensive investment. There weren't very many people making them. They were, usually made by, well, almost exclusively made by Western companies, Western production, Western costs, at a time when disposable income was, less than half what it is today, even in the financial crisis. They just weren't widely available. You didn't have a lot of Chinese goods. So back in the 60s and 70s, it was really made in Taiwan was the sign of, a cheap piece of goods, or made in China occasionally. But you certainly didn't have the widespread access to Chinese goods that you do have now. I'm going to see if I can get a more vertical kind of position with this camera without screwing this up too much. No, maybe not. Let's take a look. Get a little bit organized here. A lot of in here, because I'm trying to work out what is the best view for you guys. Actually, maybe I could do something like this. How about that? Maybe. There. Ignore all of these pieces. That's from when I was doing those of you who've seen the best model kit in the world videos, these, I think I've shown them before on stream, are all the pieces of plastic from when I was actually testing hardness, bonding, all of those wonderful things. Can I get this wire here without upsetting things too much? Yes, I can. There we go. Okay, this will be interesting because I can hardly see what I'm doing. So, this is one of the items that I received from the company, which I will link in the video description once I've done this, and obviously I'll do a dedicated video more on it. But really today is not about the company, it is about tools and techniques and how these things can help you, because Photo-etch, which is one of the things I'm going to start with today, is one of those things which I think a lot of us think is the devil's work. It's great for high detail, in scale thickness, small parts, but it is very, very different from styrene. Obviously it's metal. It doesn't bond with anything but things like super glue and 5-minute epoxy, stuff like that. And actually working with it, obviously also not quite as easy as with a normal styrene. So these are obviously display. Why is this? Just looking at the inversion here. Okay, I think we're good there. Can I flip that? Okay, that's not working. Sometimes it's difficult to actually show you guys what I'm seeing in an easy way on the stream, but hopefully this will work. So yeah, these are obviously display. Ooh, come on, focus. There we go. This is the only problem with using things like this. So I didn't mean to give you the finger there. With using cameras like this is that they do tend to try and autofocus unbidden. So apologies if we do go out of focus at any point and come back. It will come back. But display or display, depending on how you pronounce that. See, Chinese manufacturer. They do a lot of tools. So they do single bladed nippers, which look very similar to this, but obviously have cutting blades rather than here. You have the two like blunt edges, so that you would get on one side of your single bladed nippers. And the other thing they have, of course, is flat ends, so no points there. So these, and of course they're angled and they're quite thin, so enabling you to get right in to small pieces on a photo etch frame to bend them. So these are bending pliers. They're not for cutting, purely to bend them. So yeah, in a way they are, the way they look is similar to circlip pliers. Circlip pliers normally are at least rounded in some profile because they need to grip at the end, and then you obviously push, and some of them move outwards rather than inwards when you push them, depending on what type of circlip they're looking at. These, of course, are designed to be square-edged to get that nice crisp bend on there. So that's the first tool. Second tool is this beast. Again, I'm holding this towards me. That's upside down to me, so I don't know quite how I flip my camera here without showing you. I know that if I adjust this slightly, it'll switch over, but I don't think it's going to do that tonight. So apologies if I get this the wrong way around so you can't read it. Obviously Japanese, because you've got this strange anime girl. Bizarre, I know, but let's not focus on that. But this is our traditional photo etch bending tool. Okay, this is the first time I've opened these, so you're seeing them as I'm seeing them. Okay, our single edge razor blade, which I remember you used to be able to buy from chemists. And the reason, as a child, I used to buy these, and I had no issue buying single edge razor blades from a chemist. I think they cost 12 pence when I used to buy them. I used to have a microscope as a child. Explains a lot, right? And of course I did. But I used to use single edge razor blades to help me make microscope slides, or to mount things on a microscope slide. So not something you could do today. You'd have to be 18 to buy a single edge razor blade. I'm not even sure where you get them other than the internet. But sign of the times, I guess. So this is obviously quite a small photo etch bending tool. These come in various different sizes. Let me turn this around so you guys can see it properly. So that J star, U star. I'm not sure. That looks like a literal transliteration of a company name, doesn't it? But basically, you have a solid, usually aluminium plate at the base. Come on, focus. Come on, little camera. Come on. There we go. With a screw threaded attachment with obviously various different shapes depending on what sort of thing you want to bend. Let's put it down and see if it'll find it easier. There we go. So you can put something down, you can screw it down. So you've kind of clamped it, and then you use your single edge razor blade to slide under the part up to your metal piece, and then bend it up to the correct angle. So, and obviously, let me take this off actually. Yeah, these are all Chinese, or at least all Asian. And typically, sorry, that was a kind of comment there from Sean. Typically, the companies that will work with YouTubers or want to promote their things on YouTube tend to be Asian companies. Not exclusively, but a lot of the time. So you can see you've got this little insert so that you can only rotate this through 90 degrees each time. Yeah. So basically you're always getting one of these faces. Again, let's just put this. It's perfectly possible to make your own photo-etch bending tool. In fact, that was a YouTube video I was going to make, but there are others out there. So basically you want that to be obviously flush with these two. And these are obviously for bending smaller parts where you might want to, where it's you've only got a limited amount of use, or you bend it, you want a nice crisp edge, you've already got a bend in something. So say you've got something, you're forming a box or something, you want to slide your piece in here, which already has the edge up here, and then, bend this piece up to it. That's why you have these different size fingers coming in. I've never actually used one of these photo-etch bending tools, so it could be quite interesting to see how I mess that up today. Yeah, that's a fair point. So I did assume, which of course you should never do, but we all do, that it was Japanese. I mean, it may be marketed to a Japanese audience with that kind of iconography, I would suggest, which is probably fair because it's probably one of the largest, nearest markets. And the last tool here, also from Display. I'm going to inappropriately use these. Actually, we have this single edge razor blade that's just that's a lot easier, isn't it? Cutting the plastic with that. I work out how to open it. Is this a slide out? Yes, it is. There we go. This is really heavy. I can tell you from the outset. I do find disc-based stuff is pretty good. I really like their sanding pieces. They do a set in this kind of box, but it's longer and thinner. That has, I think it's 5 or 6, I think 6 actually, different grades of sandpaper. They do a couple of those sets. One is sort of, I think it's 180 through to 800. And they do another one which is, I think, starts at 800 and then goes up to a really high, several thousand grit. But this I've not seen before I was approached by this company. Okay, so these pieces here are just little rubber mats that you stick on the bottom of these. I won't be doing that today because I will misalign them if I do them on the stream. Now this I am intrigued by because one of the pieces I've never really managed to get right with Photo-etch are pieces that are curved. like bending a curved piece. And this is obviously a roller set for Photo-etch, which we use this one that's coming out to break the plastic. It's actually quite nice set. It feels like a nice set. You know, when you get that feeling of quality from something, because the weight of it is heavy. This feels like it's a solid block of steel, actually. That's not aluminium. Likewise, these seem to be steel. So this, of course, you put in your piece and you are using the steel itself to bend it. You have various diameters from this very small one up to this small club. Okay, I thought those might have sizes, but they're just dots. It's just like, well, no, they are sizes. Okay, so they are in 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 16 millimeters. Okay, that is pretty good. And you can hear that is a solid block. So I don't think I've got any cause to use this today, but I thought I'd show it as I'm showing all the other Photo-etch pieces. But I do want to check this out on the full video that I do on these, because as I say, I've never used this. The main disadvantage of these tools is that they are relatively expensive. So how much, as I say, I've got through, my modeling journey, if you like, so far from the age of 6. So, more than 4 decades of modeling with some big interruptions, I might say, without ever having to use this or one of these, or even a set of dedicated Photo-etch bending pliers. So how necessary are these? None of these are necessary. These are what I would call luxury tools. So will they make your modeling easier? I'm almost positive they will. Do you need them to be able to use Photo-etch? No, you don't. Although I would say a decent set of snub-nose pliers, whether they are dedicated, modeling tools designed for the job, or square-ended pliers that you find elsewhere, I would say is a good investment. That's typically what I've used, flat-nosed pliers, although nowhere near as fine as this, which may explain some of my Photo-etch. So with that, let's put this to one side, if I can do it without dropping it everywhere. Let's put it back in its nice dedicated box before anything else. The nice box as well, which is, I think, a good thing. You want to be able to find, it's quite distinctive. You want to be able to find your tool quickly. Oh, look at that. Oh, thank you. That's very nice. So bring on, where have I just put the model? There we go. Bring on the model. Right, let's get all our pieces out. So you can see this is what I did last time, just to put that floor, that if I close these up, you can see, and if you recall, those of you who saw the first stream, the fit on this is, let's say, ambiguous. There's only one locating pin right here at the front. Or was it? Yeah, there we go. But we have our floor in that matches nicely across. We also, let's get the little dedicated flight stand out of the way. If you think this is bad for you guys, I'm doing all this in reverse backwards, so I'm not sure what that is. Oh, where is the... I thought I'd cut a piece for the other top, but it's not here today, so fine. But these are the seats we're going to use today. So we're going to bend those with our tools and see where we get to. Now, let me get my cutting mat. Now, if there's anybody on the stream who is doing the Terry Thacker group memorial build, that was Hobby Barn, obviously, who passed away a month or so ago. There was a group build going on. Our American cousins organized that. So you haven't heard of that or didn't know, head over to Got Fuel. So that's Brian from Got Fuel Modeling. He's the guy who has, one of the guys who's organizing it. But if you're part of that and you are looking for the decals, they arrived into the UK from STS Decals in the States, who have been the ones that have actually made the decals. There was a long delay because, of course, Her Majesty's Customs and Excise wanted their pound of flesh from the package. That arrived in the UK yesterday, and those decals will be going out on Monday. So I think I have pretty much cleared all of the decals that I bought. Now, the first thing with Photo-etch, and you guys can't see this, but at the moment, this here is separated from me by my microphone, so I can't actually see what I'm doing here other than on the screen. So my sexy gogs are not helping me. So bear with me 1 second where I just go out here. So cutting Photo-etch, you want a sharp blade. So as you may or may not saw, I just used that single edge razor blade to cut through that point. Now you want something like these self-healing cutting mats underneath, or so you want something like that that's going to be hard but slightly yielding, or something completely unyielding like a ceramic tile. You can use either. And something very sharp to cut them off with, because you obviously need to cut through the metal with as little burr or residual metal on the part, because these of course are extremely thin. Any burr that you leave on here, you need to file off with a small modeling file that will actually do metal. And let's just say it's very easy to bend them in a way that you don't want if you don't have something like that going on. So these also have these rudder pedals. I need to remove there, like so. And there is our... So you can tell I can't see what I'm actually doing. Oh dear. Let's just move that off to the side a second. When I get the second one. So this is the first part of why working with Photo-etch is a real pain in the ass. Is even something simple, relatively simple, like removing the parts from the fret. Quite why it's called a fret with Photo-etch as opposed to anything else, I'm not sure. Maybe somebody knows that in the comments. But now we have our Photo-etch part. What I'm going to do now is move the camera again. So apologies, this will get wobbly. Now, there we go. Now let's put the little light on here. And let's get to focus. There we go. Why don't you want to go the right way? There we go. See how it flips there? It's sort of auto-sensing which way it should be. And sometimes it gets it right and sometimes it gets it wrong, depending on the angle. If it goes too far down, like the angle of this camera, if it gets more than like 45 degrees, it sort of switches over. Look at that Chinese writing on there. Okay. So manipulating Photo-etch is a pain. Cutting Photo-etch is a pain. Sanding Photo-etch is a pain. So you can see how big this part is, from my fingers. It's not big. It's not a large part. We need to make 3 bends to make this into a seat. So the first of which is obviously the sides. Those 2 sides first, sorry, 3, meaning 4 bends. These 2, this one, and then this one to bend up, as you can see, to this angle. So this is a 90-degree bend. These are 90-degree bends, and that is a 45-degree bend. Whoops, apologies. So let me just have a look, because I can see some questions in the chat. So I'm just going to scroll back a little bit. So apologies for. Okay, here we go. Okay. Mark says, I love Display. Require a pair for my Display drawer. Yeah, I think they're a pretty good company in terms of the quality of the stuff they make. I've not been disappointed with anything that I've had from them so far. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Sean. Gundam is indeed massive in Japan, much more of a market than sort of the military modeling over there, although the military modeling, of course, is still very prevalent. And yeah, you're right, Chinese tools are marketed directly at them. Although, of course, the Chinese and Japanese don't have a great history of good relations between them. But I think, obviously, one of the things is price. They compete on price. And if you can keep the quality up and maintain a good price, then I think that's where the Chinese have been making great strides in the past sort of 20 years. Yes, I can appreciate your sentiments, Daniel. I am intrigued is maybe the correct word about the roller set. Yeah, those PE rollers, Welly. It's as I said, I've not had a chance to use sort of curved PE in the past, and I've kind of avoided any of that because I've never felt the ability to be able to create it properly. all the very small tubes I had to make in PE. I use precision screwdrivers. Yeah, there are a lot of tools that you can use, and a lot of tools in modeling, that we actually that aren't intended for their design, for the purpose you end up using them, that are quite possible to use in these situations. And we are nothing if not, well, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. Here is a good one. So, yes, you can absolutely use PE scissors. One thing with cutting PE with scissors is don't use scissors that you want to use for anything else. So, depending on the type of scissors, the type of PE, because and it depends, right, as well. A lot of this, there are general rules, which then there are specific situations which change. So photo-etch brass is quite a soft metal, right? Even though it feels hard and everything. For a metal, it's quite soft. So cutting it with blades and things is relatively easy. You will often see there are different types of photo-etch in a lot of kits these days, and those are slightly harder metals. Now you can remove burrs. I'm about to do something you should never do, but again, I'm always going to do as I say, not as I do. So you can remove a burr using a blade if it's sharp enough. You really shouldn't, but I don't have a file to hand, so I'm also using a single edge razor blade cutting towards myself, which again you should never really do. I do also have the slight confidence that there is this in the way, so if I slip, it's going to hit that before my finger. I just wanted to take that tiny nubbin just down a little bit. I'm not too concerned about it being absolutely flush. But yeah, much like using a blade, and maybe you guys don't know this, but if you use a blade like this single edge razor blade, if you use that to cut cardboard, it's one of the quickest ways to dull the blade. Cardboard, although you think, oh yeah, this is great, I can cut cardboard with it, which it does, it'll dull it really quickly. You start cutting a lot of photo-etch with your wife's best nail scissors, and probably not a great idea for long. Oh, so you still have some specific scissors, yeah. So those are one of the things that I would be inclined to do one of two things, right? I would either buy some specific photo-etch scissors, because they're probably going to be made of a grade stainless steel that is, harder, a higher grade stainless steel, specifically to cut metal. Because if you think really what you're doing is using like tin snips, or use a fairly cheap small set from wherever, like Poundland or wherever, that I'm going to basically think of as disposable, which is probably not the most environmentally friendly way of doing it, but of course at least metal can be recycled. Yes, PE ought to be banned on one. I mean, the thing is, PE, right? I mean, this seat is one thing, and I've used these seats quite a bit, and they do add, a nice level of detail quite quickly, quite easily, relatively speaking. Where did I put that fret? There we go. Whilst you talk about some of the other pieces here, so as an example, we point out these. Just use this to point it out. Okay, focus. That is a compass. Now you can see the size of this because this is, a little crocodile clip for holding small parts. And it looks like some sort of enormous cable. So that has to be bent. Those edges have to be bent up. Yeah, and then you've got the actual compass part to put in that little ridge there. Here, similar thing, These are ammo belts. This is fine because you just cut them out, cut the piece you want, and put them in. Really easy to use. Seat belts, again, pretty easy to use. These pieces are absolutely microscopic. I believe they're gun sights. I don't think I've ever used one of those, so I think it's as with all things. I have used these rudder pedals as well, and they're an absolute pain in the arse. They really are. Considering that you can barely see rudder pedals when you finish. That's why there's a lot on here, because I don't really use them. So as with everything, it's kind of, you pay your money and you take your choice. You've got some mirrors here. Again, you'll see that they're all still present on the fret, which shows you how often I've used them. I think it's good as an option. I think when sets include mandatory photo etch, that's when it becomes a bit more problematic. Here's a good question. Do you need to sand the surface of PE before gluing? I never have. So I don't know if people believe that you should, but I mean, will you get a better bond if you sand it before you glue it? Yeah, you will, undoubtedly, because you get clean rather than oxidized metal. But I mean, this set is pretty ancient. It's at least 25 years old. So it has, a fair amount of patina on it compared to a fresh piece of photo etch. And still, it's not a huge amount, You can actually see where it's been stacked with another set, look, and the oxidation has happened on some parts versus others. I wouldn't bother with any sanding. As you can see, I'm not going to have any sanding of these edges, because the amount of cyanoacrylate glue you're going to have to use here compared to the surface area that you're getting, really all you're doing with the cyanoacrylate is tacking the pieces together. Most of the structure comes from actually folding it, and when you're gluing it in place, again, the amount of CA glue you're using compared to the part, it's not like you've got a painted piece, which this CA glue is going to pull a layer off. The oxide layer, any oxide layer that you get is, chemically bound to the metal, so it's part of the structure. So you don't really need to worry about that, I don't think, in my opinion. Others may differ. So let's actually use our little set. So I'm going to start off by changing this around to the flat edge, just to show you. So we're going to put this piece in. Right, this is going to be the difficult piece, right? Is aligning it. And normally I would use my scalpel to do this, but that's downstairs somewhere. We're going to just do it so the piece is just caught there. So I'm actually using the etch line in here to align it. There we go. You see, that just went in. I'm going to tighten that down. That's nice and tight. And then again, as I mentioned before, we slide. See how that's going underneath? So it just uses the blade, and this is why it uses a blade. Right there, and then we just fold up. And there's our folded piece at 90 degrees. And then we can undo it and retrieve. You see, we have a nice crisply bent piece of photo etch there. Now, of course, the problem with this now is you can't use that same thing, because, hey, guess what? You've got a massive, great sticky up bit there. And that is, of course, where these fingers come in that you can slide your piece in to a bit which doesn't have that you know, like this one, and bend it up. If you're going to do it this way, obviously you can bend this in this way. But of course, I'm only going to get a 45-degree angle here. So sometimes you do need to think about the order in which you're doing this, like folding a box, for instance. So these tools are great, especially for larger pieces where you've got, you know, big edges. But I still tend to think that these kind of pliers allow you a lot of versatility, because here, let me get in a little bit. Let me just move this a little. So here you can see your pliers. You can align them with your surface. You can be quite precise about them. Again, I'm trying to both look at this on screen and look at it in reality, and it's a little bit difficult. So you grasp it where you want to bend it, and then of course you can use your finger, but ideally you want to use a nice flat surface. We just happen to have one here in this aluminium block, and you're going to bend it in exactly the same way we did, and there we go. Come on, focus. There we go. Now, if I show you the two bends, see the one we did with the tool here, the lower one, is crisper than that one. You know, when we're looking at this sort of level of zoom, you can see there is a slight rounding there. And that's because when you're using your hands and using, even though you're using a flat surface, I rolled it slightly. So that's why that is not 100% a 90-degree bend. Now, some people will stress about that. Again, I point you to the fact that look at the size of my fingers. That is not something you need to worry about in a 1/72nd scale kit. Yeah, that is very undetectable to a normal human eye at anything other than, you know, magnification. And I am at what? There is about a 12-centimeter distance between me and this camera, designed for looking, you know, as a macro camera. So for me, I would rather have the flexibility of a pair of bending pliers like this than worry too much about getting absolutely perfect bends. This sort of tool, I think, again, this is only my personal opinion rather than, you know, Canon or anything, but I think these are far better suited to large pieces rather than the smaller bits, which I think can be more easily achieved using pliers, but that's just me. So let's see, what are we going to do now? Actually, just going to see. How well we can start this bend just doing this. Now the other part is, of course, you should leave a little room, not as much as that, but a little room for the bend itself. And you can see this is really good for 45 degrees. So here I'm using a combination. I've started the bend there. I can carry it on a little bit more using my pliers. What I would typically do is if I've got Imagine these are, well, one in focus. Come on, camera. Come on, come on, come on, you can do it. Focus. Come on. There we go. Imagine these are a lot thicker, right? So I have a pair of pliers which is actually conveniently this wide. So you can imagine if I can put a pair of pliers in here and it covers the whole of this, I can get a nice bend. I can bend the whole piece up into that without worrying, which is exactly what I do with these seats. And for me, it's worth it because that one set of pliers basically can bend all of these World War II seats, whether they're Luftwaffe, whether they are USAF. Or RAF, because people's bums tend to be the same width, or at least they were in 1940. So again, this one I'm just going to use. Let's just bend it. See, I've got the angle there, and what I'm going to do now is actually just using the bend I've already got on here. Just bend this up with my fingers, and that forms the basis of my seat. Need probably a little bit more of a bend in that. Oops, if I can not drop it. Make sure I get the same angle, the same line. There we go. No, I'm not showing you on camera, sorry. A bit more reality over a stream there. So you can see now we have more or less the basic shape, and then you can tweak it just, using your fingers. And now we can actually apply CA glue just to sort of tack those plate pieces in place. And we have our little World War II Royal Air Force or Royal Navy seat. Right, let me just have a quick look back at the chat. Okay, Lucky 13 has a small pair of Tamiya scissors that only use on P, 100% recommend. So I think, it's using scissors for photo etch, I think it's a good recommendation because, say, even if they weren't ideal or you don't feel they give you the sharpest cut for your P or whatever, the convenience of having something which is, handleable like these, which is one of the reasons I think that these, for me, often trump this, even though this gives a slightly better result, this, I should say, rather than pointing with these. The convenience and the ease of use of handling this, the natural feel of a pair of pliers in your hand versus this tool where you get really no, come on camera. There we go. It's because I keep waving my hands about. You get no haptic feedback from this. And the haptic feedback is extremely important. So as a bit of an aside, I don't know if you know, the F-16, when it was being designed, the F-16 is a completely fly-by-wire aircraft, which was a new thing compared to the aircraft before it. And the side stick originally, when it was designed by, was it General Dynamics who did it originally? I think it was, wasn't it? Didn't move. It was a static stick. It was a force feedback mechanism. And pilots absolutely hated it because there was no haptic feedback. You couldn't tell how far you were, when you were pushing on the stick one way, the stick registered the force you were applying, but you didn't get any feedback to that force other than, the pressure on your hand. So you found that a lot of pilots were inducing what they call, I think it's PIR, pilot-induced roll, where the aircraft rocks backwards and forwards, where as they correct and overcorrect for their movements. So that's why they changed it to the current joystick, because people like to have haptic feedback. We have evolved for that. So it's much more natural to have some sort of feedback. So I think if you've got a device like scissors, like a set of tweezers, something with handles, and it gives you some feedback, you can, even though you're not feeling it directly, you get an indirect feel for how much force you're using. And that, I think, even if it's less than a 100% perfect tool, is a better result, or gives you better results, because what you lose in the precision, for instance, of this bend, you gain in the precision of the feedback that you get through using your haptic feedback device. Come on, camera. There we go. So you can see here, I've just taken a slightly different approach and have bent the seat up first. I'm just making sure I've got the right line here. I think it's actually there. So it's difficult to see where I am in the camera. Apologies if I suddenly go off. Now, one of the things, of course, I've just bent that down so you can see. But when you're bending up into something, you've got to make sure that your tweezers or whatever device aren't going to clash with the piece you've just bent. I'm going to bend this one just using these. But the main points with any Photo-etch bending tool is you need, let's bend that back, a really solid, straight edge, and something solid to bend it against, because obviously if that yields, it's going to bend unevenly. There we go. So there's our second seat. I probably overbent that a little bit. So yeah, there, I think I've overbent that, or bent it in slightly the wrong place. You can, of course, correct this. So I don't really want that bend that I put in. So I'm actually going to put this back under here and actually just tighten this down to flatten it out. You see, so that's nice and flat again. Yeah, I think that is the line I want. The one I had. A little bit further There we go. That's a lot happier with that. So there we go. There's the second little RF seat. So these two are slightly different styles. I don't really care. Come on, little camera, focus on those. No, don't swap over. Don't make them upside down. There we go. Kind of talk very nicely to this camera for it to do what you want it to. It does what you want. It does it very nicely. But so I'll probably have that as the. Well, which one do you think should be the pilot? The pilot should be more comfortable than navigator, probably. Okay. Do you have to use special paint for PE? Yes and no. So do you have to use special paint for PE? No, but you should prime it. And then the next comment actually goes through that. Painting PE, I just give it a dust of etch primer, stuff I use to paint full size things. Yeah. So it's metal, right? So it'll take paint differently than plastic. So if you prime everything, or like NH has said, if you give this a dust of etch primer, so if you prime this before then putting it into the model, and then paint them together, they will take the paint better. This is one of the reasons I like primer anyway, is because it provides an even finish for you to be able to work on with your paint. Because if you just go in with different paints on different surfaces, you can get different results, right? That's the whole purpose of a primer, right? Is to even out. It shows your mistakes. It does a whole bunch of stuff, gives you that even, consistent painting surface. So let's just have a look. Replace that where it's meant to be. Now, obviously, just put one of these roughly where it's supposed to be. It doesn't go all the way in here. Come out. Can't grab it now. There. So that's going to sit at about that in the cockpit. Maybe about there. So we'll see it, and we'll put some seat belts on as well, just to make it look good. But let's put some super glue on. Now I could use the old trick of putting super glue on. If you've got any of this cellophane type material, any packaging cellophane, putting a drop of super glue on it. It doesn't like to cure when it's on this, so it won't actually cure to this for ages. So it's a nice sort of material to put CA glue on while you're then working it with the stuff. So I'm not particularly using delicate tools here. So it's just a matter of getting some CA glue between the two. This is where I think accelerator becomes invaluable. So if you use an accelerator now, that will cement that instantly, because CA glue doesn't particularly like to cure when you want it to, because especially when paired with Photo-etch, both of the work are the devil. So they of course work together to make your life a misery. So I would almost always use accelerator doing these sorts of joints, just because it makes it much easier. And of course, you're working in such small spaces, the chances of you gluing your fingers either together or much more likely to the Photo-etch part are incredibly high. And, you know, even a 30-second working time with CA glue doesn't sound long. But when you're waiting 30 seconds without trying to touch anything with CA glue, it's inevitably forever. And then you test it just as it's going off, sticks apart to your finger, you pull it off, you end up bending your photo etch in ways you don't want. It is horrible. Yeah, absolutely. NH, this this is the worst part. So if you got something like Deluxe Materials do, I think it's Rocket Glue Accelerator. There's a lot of accelerators. Check them, because some of the early accelerators were quite toxic. They've got a lot better now. But yeah, I think that's cured there. At least gone off. So yeah, I'll go around all of those. I'm not going to do all of that now. You've seen people glue stuff before, right? Oh, it's gone upside down again. Come on. There we go. Come on. Don't do that. There we go. So I just got a little gravity sensor in it. So all we are doing with that is, you know, literally tacking it into the place we want. And you can see it does make a difference. You can see how that's splayed a little bit. Just tacking it in. You can solder photo etch. Apparently, it's not something I've ever done, nor probably would do. But if you have those skills and you feel comfortable with that, you know, that may be a better way to do things. I don't, and I'm not, so I leave that to people who are more skilled than I am. So that's the photo etch part of tonight, as much as I really want to do on stream, because this is incredibly difficult to do for you guys to actually see. As you can see, this doesn't want to focus all the time on the bits that I want to show you. It's difficult to actually, oh, come on. It's difficult to show you on camera and for me to actually see what I'm doing, because, of course, I'm using the faithful Sexy Gogs. Got to get Sexy Gogs on camera at least once. Which, of course, have a working distance of 12 to 15 centimeters, which is about the focal length of this camera. Hey, no surprises, right? Because that's the kind of focal length that you need to be working with this sort of size of stuff. So I have to compromise on one or the other, and neither's good, right? But that, I feel, should give us a pretty good... you see that? We just tried to stick there. Did you see? Now, I believe this should sit about there. I think on the reference photos I have, the seat... Oh, you can't see that. The seat sits about there in the cockpit. There is then a little cushioned headrest here, which I'll literally make out of a piece of styrene card, just like a little blob there. And then we'll put the seat belts in. And that's basically all of the detail I'm going to put in this cockpit, because there's not a lot going to be visible once we get this all together. For the back, we have the piece which I think is in the other box. I must have put it with all the other styrene. But we have the piece, the shelf that went around here. If you recall that, with, again, the seat sitting in here. And then we've got to make the radio equipment. Again, that'll just be a block of styrene. I'm not going to go to town on that. And then we can actually put that together. The other piece that I'll do is a little grill for the front there. As you can see, this, I think, is one of the big... If you're going to look at a kit like this, like an older kit, and a lot of these older kits are quite nice. I mean, as I mentioned before, the only real positive locating pieces here are at this front, and then the rest is kind of guesswork. It's really relying on that tail to hold in the rest of it. There aren't any pins on the rest of this, right? But a lot of older kits like this will simplify, because of course they didn't really have the technology at the time not to. But pieces like, come on, focus. Come on, little camera. Come on, you can do it. Let me stop moving around. Come on. There. So obviously they didn't use a separate piece for in here. They just split it in the fuselage. That is actually quite a difficult seam to cure, right? Because if you fill it, you can't sand that piece. Or I won't say can't. There's always a way to do it. Just there we go. There's always a way to do it, but it's more of a pain in the ass to do that than it is to find another solution, right? So either you want to cut this piece out entirely, or what I would probably do is use this as a template for one side, mark it at the back halfway, and then do the same on this side, and then just you've got a blanking piece in the front, because depth of plasticard is going to make no difference here, which is what I'm going to do. But I'm not going to use plasticard. I'm going to use a very fine grill mesh that I have across here, because you won't see, when this is black, you won't see it as a backing for any mesh. So that's a solution I think I'm going to take for this. And again, internally, they've taken the same approach. Not going to worry about this, because of course we've got the shelf and the radio equipment will hide that. This back one, I think I'm going to just do, see the back one here, that's more addressable, right? Because once you glue that, you can sand across that. But again, I will probably just use a blanking plate in this, just made of thin styrene, like 10 thou styrene. And just simple things. You don't have to go, if you want to improve an old 1960s, 1970s kit like this, because you like the subject, it's the actual shape of it is pretty decent. It's just basic, right? So this is where you can show some of your modeling chops. The other thing, of course, I have to do is drill these out, because these are quite prominent intakes, and they did what a lot of manufacturers did and still do, right? There was always a compromise between what detail you can put into a kit, the molding technology available, the cost in the end. And they just did, well, is that so important for the majority of people who are building this? Probably not. If they are, more experienced models, they'll sort it themselves, but they just blanked it off. It's the easiest solution for the manufacturer without introducing a lot of complexity into the model, more parts. Look at the parts count on a kit at this age and cost, because remember, these were pocket money kits. You've got what, 1, 2, obviously, 1, 2, 3. You've got this as one of the detail sprues, not a lot, and then you got this as the other one. Again, which of course I'm not using many of these parts, but there's not many parts, So in terms of the numbers of parts, they are a far cry from some of the complexity of modern kits. That doesn't make them bad, just makes them different and of their time. course, we do have the other wing pieces. There's only a couple of those. I mean, even things like the propeller, you know, molded all in one. There's no separate blades, and you know, most of the work here is cleaning these joints up. Yeah, it's very basic, but again, it's not bad in this scale. Once you've cleaned these pieces up, you know, it'll look okay. So, you know, some people decry kits at this age, and for sure, I do it myself when I talk about Revell's toolings. And you know, selling a kit like this, not this one obviously, but I mentioned the 1970s the 32nd scale Corsair. Picking this up or being sent it, you know, if I picked this up at a model show and spent £5 on it, you know, got it home, I'd be quite happy to put a bit of work in. Or as of course it was sent in by a member, I'm very grateful for. You know, again, prepared to put the effort in. If I bought this for £24 or £22, you know, in a new box, I'd be pissed, right? Because it's money for old rope. It's dishonest. So that is the difference. It's not a problem with the kit per se. It's a problem with the value proposition and the honesty of presentation. So that's one other thing. CA glue debonders. So if you're looking at obviously gluing a piece like this, and you do end up gluing your fingers with CA glue, the variety of debonders, but acetone works very well. So if your partner or you have some nail varnish remover containing acetone, that will do the same job. Depending on how much acetone on it, may take shorter or longer, but you don't need to necessarily buy a dedicated CA glue debonder. These locators need removing, you think? I'm tempted to keep those because I think, you know, they are in the correct place. They are holding that. Oh, again, apologies, you couldn't see that. Come on, focus. Thank you. It's almost like it is by command. I mean, they're not great locators in terms of the depth of them. You know, if we show you the size of them, they're pretty subtle, right? Which is why I'm having such problems here. But they are in the right place, unlike a lot of kits of this age where the locators actually prevent you from doing. These are in the right place. They are giving you a good positive location on that. In fact, they're the only thing that is giving me that location, as I say, apart from this piece there. Those are the two ends that are actually giving me a positive location fit on this model. So yeah, interesting. Okie dokie. Let me just sort this light out a second. Then we'll switch over cameras. There. Reduce it down a bit. There we go. Okay. Ooh, that's way too. Problem is I don't have my secondary light here at the moment. So if this is too fierce, it tends to. Ooh. I'm blue then. I look like I'm stuck in a cave. Anyway, that was really, really hard from my point of view, showing you that with that camera. I need to work on exactly how I can get this set up. I think I've got better tools. I just need to organize them properly to be able to show you guys what I'm seeing effectively when I'm doing it. Because, as I mentioned, wearing these, with a fairly short focal distance, let me show you. So this is my this is my microphone, right? Imagine having that in front of you, like directly in front of you, and trying to work over it, which is where I was showing you everything. That wasn't easy. So apologies if it didn't come across very well. But hopefully you got a rough idea of, one, how these tools work. So I need more practice with this kind of tool, especially on using these cutout sections to do stuff that is, mid-bend, let's call it, to get better. I think it's just a matter of practice and use. Sorry, I'm just hide that one because it's showing. So just a practice to be able to get better usage out of this tool, because the large flat piece bending it gives you the best results, I think, that kind of tool. The convenience and speed of a pair of Photo-etch bending pliers like these, I think, is really good, especially for small parts. We didn't really show it today because I didn't really have the small parts. I mean, yeah, these are small, right? Just to give you. So this is the size of thing we've been working on, right? Putting it in perspective. But in terms of those really tiny parts, like if I was doing, for instance, where if I put them so small they get lost in a second. Here we go. So this fret, if I was doing one of these, those compasses, these would be the tools to use rather than this, I feel. I'm intrigued to see the results from the Photo-etch rollers. I just need something that I can use them on. I think I've got some AFVs. Well, I know I've got some AFVs actually, like the Tiger rear shields for the exhausts. That set is going to be perfect for that, I think. Just look. Sorry, just trying to check the chat at the same time. So yeah, I would like to see a set of these, which aren't bent like the single-bladed snippers, which are great for getting into pieces. I'd like to see some just flat, broader ones, like the ones I have, which the ones I have are really cheap. Like they were literally like from a market, a set for £3 or something, with like 5 different sets of pliers in. But they just happen to be the exact width that makes that bending trivial. And because they're 90 degrees on sides as well, you can actually bend the sides up and bend the top, and it's all really easy. Whereas you can't do that with this because of their angle and how thin they are. But for bending small parts where you don't have the room, I think a pair of tools like this is ideal. So, if I had the choice of recommending one of these two tools, I would probably recommend these over this. These are also much cheaper. So I think you could spend the same amount of money you're spending on this on a couple of pairs of these. Now, having said that, if you're going to be doing a lot of intricate stuff, so if you're doing like ship model building, I think maybe you might get more use out of that. But I don't know. There are a couple of ship builders in the builders in the comments. So let me know what your experience is of these, and or whether you use something more like the the pliers, because I have limited experience using Photo-etch with ships. It's one of the reasons actually I don't build like 1/700 scale ships, is because the amount of Photo-etch is scary. I actually had a viewer buy an I Love Kit HMS Hood, the I can't remember what they call it, like the deluxe or the special edition or whatever, which has I think 3 or 4 sheets of Photo-etch, has turned brass barrels. It looks amazing and it looks terrifying at the same time. So many pieces, so much Photo-etch, bending all of that Photo-etch, those delicate, aerial mass structures and stuff. Yeah, challenging for sure. But I don't know, because I don't have that experience, which of those tools will work better for that kind of stuff. Okay. So yeah, one of the things on old kits, so as I say, I don't think, for me, I wouldn't remove the locating pins on this, but that's very particular to this kit. So yeah, if you're doing other ones and you find that I don't think it's you, right? If you get misalignment of a part, if it's like this, because the locating tabs are forcing it like that. Some of the parts of the Bristol Bloodhound I have here, these booster rockets, the solid fuel boosters, I think they were solid fuel. 3 of them worked perfectly. One of them, I had to cut the locators off because the locators were misaligning the parts. So absolutely, it does happen. I think it's very much kit specific, and the Firefly I think is pretty good. Your favorite front kit was the VC10 with working lights. Wow. I mean, now there'd be LEDs, and back then it would probably use like a couple of AA batteries or bigger. And now it would be like a tiny button battery, and you have more lights, and it'd be brighter. On a sale on eBay for £175. Wow. Yeah, I don't think it's worth that. Rather than using rollers for PE, I used a plain shank for drill bit. Yeah. The only thing I would say is that, because that's some good advice, right? But with this tool, the benefit of it, I'm guessing, I haven't used it obviously, but you got to think with this, because you're right, you can get drill bits in all of those sizes, right? What you're not getting is this. It's because it's not just bending, it's bending against a template, and it's the combination of these two things together that is giving you the profile here. So that, I think, is the main advantage of this sort of thing over just buying drill bits which have a long plain shank that you can use. But again, this is an expensive tool, whereas drill bits are pretty inexpensive. Obviously don't go buying tungsten carbide tipped specialized masonry bits at 300 mils, because that's going to get expensive, pointless pretty quickly. But there are almost always normal world alternatives to specialized modeling tools. The difference is the specialized modeling tools sometimes, not always, because they've been designed for tasks, give you that little bit more that a, like, if you like, DIY tool doesn't. So it's kind of that, again, you pay your money, you take your choice. If you don't have the money to drop, I don't know what that is, I'll have to look at the price, but say it's $100, yeah, because it's pretty pricey. If you don't have $100 to drop on a tool that you're going to use once a year, maybe, or for one project, then absolutely getting an alternative which is much cheaper, much more available, that you may already have in your tool shed, is absolutely the way to go. Okie dokie. Yeah, and H, please do keep those tips coming, because one of the things that I say this in my channel intro, I want the stuff I do to be accessible. I don't think of myself as, a master modeler or anything. And if you guys, as the community, can share your knowledge, especially where mine is lacking, that's perfect, right? I wouldn't necessarily recommend something myself if I haven't tried it. I think that's just integrity, But if you guys say, hey, you could use this, and it's something that I think is, let's say, a mainstream thing, then I'll probably go and try that and say, yeah, actually, and I obviously credit that person with the recommendation, because I think everything I've learned from somebody else, right? Whether that was my father when I started out in modeling, for the basics, people in the model clubs that I used to go to, from modeling magazines that I used to read and pick up pieces from articles. I don't think I've invented anything myself. If I have, it's been very, very minor. So minor that I can't even think of it. So I think the community part of our modeling hobby is something that's quite often overlooked. Certainly in the past, I think it was kind of overlooked a little bit. Modeling clubs would think, but they could become elitist. The IPMS is a good example, I think, of an organization which is a good heart that maybe got a little bit out of touch. I think individual clubs are often more grounded. I think when things become societies, they can sometimes get a life of their own. So I'd love to hear more of your tips. If my own experience goes counter to that, I'll say. But at the end of the day, it's for you guys to take all of this stuff in, percolate it, and come up with your own spin on it, right? And try it in the same way that I did during my modeling journey. And if any of these tips can help people not make the mistakes that all of us did along our journey, that's kind of the main thrust of it, right? Only built two 106. Look, get my teeth in. There we go. 2117 says, only built two 1/600 scale ships with PE, but definitely use the specialist PE tools. Right. Okay. Yeah. Thing is with a ship is there's a lot of photo etch in it, and most of it's mandatory, right? It's not stuff unless you want to provide your own pieces that there's an alternative for. It's not like, oh, here's all the styrene pieces, and then there's photo etch if you prefer to use it. Generally, I'm speaking broad generalizations, can't speak for every kit, obviously. It is that kind of Hobson's choice. Okay. Well, I think that brings us up to date on the chat. I've gone through those tools, and I think we've reached a natural point in proceedings for us to end. A little bit early, but I still need to have something proper to eat. So I'm going to close it off there. I'm going to say thank you very much for everybody for joining today. So a busy week this week for me at Man's Model Moments, because, as I say, we've got Airfix and Chill tomorrow. Tuesday, I'll be recording with Valeria, the interview that will go out on Wednesday at the Midweek Model Meet. So if you're interested in knowing what's happening with ICM, if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask Valeria and ICM about their business, all that kind of thing, if you go to the community post on the channel, it's not the last posting, it's the post before it, still open. Put your comments in there, what you would like to ask, and I'm collating those. I keep adding into our interview script. We're recording it not live because obviously English is not Valeria's first language. She wants to make sure that her responses are good for us, if you like, and I want to obviously make sure that they're comfortable with the whole situation. So please do add those questions in. I'll ask the sensible ones. If you ask silly ones, then I'll probably screen them out. So just put in a dash of common sense when you think about your questions. I wouldn't ask too many questions about, are we going to get X model or whatever. I've got a couple of those in there already. I think I've got all that I'm going to ask, because it must be very wearing, I'm thinking, from a manufacturer's perspective, to be constantly asked questions which, let's face it, they're not going to be able to answer. And they probably don't want to give away too much of the secrets about what they're doing. Airfix don't disclose what they're going to do next year. ICM have actually disclosed more than a lot of companies do. ICM and Italeri have both given us sort of sneak peeks into 2025. So yeah, if you're going to ask, are they going to do this, or please do X, that probably won't make it in. So sorry, guys, but keep them about, interesting stuff you want to know about ICM, how they work. If you've got any interesting questions about that, you'll already see there are some questions on there which ask, I think, things that we've all thought, principally, how do they keep producing so many high quality kits when they're at war? But I think that's going to be really interesting. I'm really looking forward to it. And it'll be really good to be able to share that with you guys on Wednesday. So I look forward to that. I thank you all for joining me on this Sunday evening. And then the Froome Model Show report will go out at some point this week. I'd like to get it out for Tuesday, but given that I'm doing the interview with Valeria, I'm not sure that's going to happen. So it might be Thursday. Not Froome, Yeovil Model Show, sorry. And that's it. I'm just burbling now. So I'm going to say good night. Thank you all, and catch you on Wednesday. Cheers, guys.